Hi, everyone. Welcome into week 2 of Sun Times Game Week. We are here live at Phillips football practice for, again, week 2. We've got exciting football action this weekend. Games finally kick off. But, Michael, first talk about some of our hot topics this week.
Yeah, we had some news things happen. Start out with it was a sad, rough week in the city. I'm sure everybody's read about all the violence and stuff. We had 2 high school athletes actually died this week. The first one was a football player at Marshall. His name's Kenwan Parker. He was shot outside the Dome in Garfield Park. I'm sure a lot of you know there's a big summer basketball tournament there. And then Steve Rosenthal, he was a sophomore basketball player at Crane. Also was killed. And then Shelby Frazier, who's a big personality, well-known kid in South Holland. He played for Thornwood a couple years ago. He was a Robert Morris recently. He just passed out after a pickup game at Thornton, I guess. Kind of shocked, the whole local basketball community. So it's been an oddly rough week. Looking forward to starting some games and getting away from all that. Right. Kind of the other news that happened, you've probably seen it on the website, but we had 17 basketball teams. Their AD and their coach were punished, slapped on the wrist a little bit by the
a slight infraction. It wasn't a huge deal. I mean, it was just participating in tournaments that before
the Riverside Brookfield tournament, which most people know about, it's a big deal. Just the way it fell in the calendar happened to be against the IHSA rule if you were still in school. Mm-hmm. So, but a lot of big programs, Fenwick and Young and Simeon, and got that punishment. It turns out the coach and AD just have to take an online class. One of the coaches told me it's like they got a traffic ticket or something.
And this has never been an issue in the past. Schools have just organized it better where they weren't competing during the end of the school year.
The way the calendar fell, it was just kind of an awkward thing. I think it might.
The Riverside Brookfield tournament's a huge tournament.
Yeah, I think there might have been an issue about 25 years ago. This thing called the Centurion Classic, but that's ancient history at this point. The other kind of things, we had 2 commitments. Terrence Shannon from Lincoln Park committed to DePaul.
And decommitted.
Just yesterday, so he's back on the market. I think that's DePaul's 3rd decommit in the last couple of years. And Tommy Welch from Naperville North is going to go to Loyola, which is big news for them.
In case you already didn't know, I'm Annie Cospel. This is Michael O'Brien. This is Beth Long. We are going to bring you all of your high school coverage this entire football season. And like Michael said, those were some of our hot topics to start this week. But we also, the rain's coming down here a little bit with us too, so bear with us. But the exciting news are the remaining teams in our Super 25. We've already been announcing the top 10. We haven't yet announced the number 1 and number 2 team, but we're going to go through some of our the remaining teams from our Super 25. So first we've got number 10, which was Lake Zurich.
I'll give you guys a little bit of a hint. There's a reason why we're at Phillips. You see them practicing behind us, and you don't know if it's a number 2 or a number 1 reason until we get there. So really the theme, Annie, of the top 10, honestly, was defense this year. And I didn't actually realize it was defense until after selecting them. They had all these other reasons and all these top athletes and what have you. But it's defense and consistency between the top 10 teams.
You're going through and you start to realize it's like every team has a strong defensive unit returning or a strong defensive player on their team. So like you said, the defense really is what tells the story of our top 10 in the Super 25.
It was an unintended theme for sure. I like offense, but defense is where it's at this year for Chicago football. Lake Zurich, number 10. One player I want to call out at Lake Zurich, and we actually have a lot of linebackers who I think will change the game for schools this year. Linebacker Luke Dwyer, who's headed to North Dakota State. Mm-hmm. I think North Dakota State's an underrated program. I think he's an underrated kid. I am expecting them to avenge that loss in the 7A championship game after an undefeated season pretty quickly out at Lake Zurich.
Well, Michael, talk about that for a second, because avenging that loss, I mean, there are a lot of teams in the top 10 who are starting their seasons with a loss to avenge. So Lake Zurich being one of them, talk about the mentality over there in avenging that loss this season. How much is that guiding their team this year?
For Lake Zurich, not much. A lot of these teams I went to, it was a big deal. They were kind of obsessed with it. Lake Zurich, they lost a super close game to Batavia. Could have gone either way. And there's enough new faces there. And they weren't embarrassed really in any way. Right. So I think it's a little less there. Some of these other teams in the countdown, though, definitely a big deal. One of the things I took away out at Lake Zurich, Matt McGraw, he was the quarterback at Grant last year, was their starter, posted some nice numbers. He's most likely going to be the starter at Lake Zurich. So that is a new face on offense to go along with, I think, at least 2 starting linebackers back, and then Jack Moses, who's a really talented receiver. So, Lake Zurich should have a very good year.
Anything else to add to Lake Zurich's storyline?
Lake Zurich, like the next team I'll intro to you, number 9, I feel like is always like kind of a quiet powerhouse. We don't have to talk about them much, and they're still going to be in the conversation come the end of the year. They're going to go deep into the playoffs, maybe to the state championship game like last year. Another team at number 9 that is in that exact same conversation is Glenbard West.
Consistently great, consistently talented team, always competing, always putting out talent, consistently great team.
Let me just put it this way with Glenbard West. I'd rather bet for Glenbard West than against Glenbard West, no matter what it is.
I concur.
Yeah, and they're pretty wound up about what happened last year, the 63 to 30 something loss at home to Maine South. I mean, if you've been to Glen Ellen and to a football game, those people are pretty obsessed with it. It's
and
a big
losing by that much is not a typical thing for a Glenbard West team.
Yeah, that was probably the most shocking game. People are just shocked at how bad. And those Glenbard West kids they really need to get that taste out of their mouths. They're pretty upset with it. And Taekwon Cox, not a big recruit. You know, he's not somebody that's on everybody's big list, but boy, I've seen him play some fabulous games. He's just a dangerous kick returner. He's a really exciting player. And Glenbard West doesn't always have that guy. You know, they're kind of a system defense team, so they've got, I think, 7 starters back on defense, plus a talent like Taekwon Cox, and they're Glenbard West. That's pretty solid.
And they're opening their season against Maine South.
Yeah.
So what was the mentality at practice when you stopped out there? They're starting their season trying to avenge that loss.
Yeah, I think they were telling me how much it helps to be so motivated and excited for that first game. You know, you always wonder if it's better for a team to ease in or play a big game. Well, these kids said every time they lift a weight or do a drill, they're just thinking about getting revenge on Maine South.
How do these two teams match up, though? Because obviously that is a guiding force for them this season and this offseason. You know, those kids had that on their mind, the offseason coming into the season. But looking at those two teams, what's Friday night going to look like between them two?
It's hard to say for Maine South because it's so many new faces, you know, especially on offense. You know, they're going to have a new quarterback. You know, Fotis Kaskululis, is gone. He's like my favorite player, and I never learned how to properly say his last name. But he's at Northern Illinois now. So there's so many new faces for Maine South that I'm not sure what it's going to look like on the field. We'll see.
I think the only thing that I know about Maine South for sure is that their offensive line is going to be pretty dominant. They have some of the best returners in the whole state on their offensive line, and even some young kids that I'm really excited about watching. And normally with a team that's always in the conversation like Maine South, Glenbard West, if you have an offensive line that can play, like, you'll find the kids that can make the plays behind them. I will say with Glenbard West, every single year that we've seen them just completely dominate, they've had a kid like Taekwon Cox. Like Sam Brodner. Like
we all remember Sam Brodner.
The X factor. Sorry, Sam. We could not remember what your name was last week or 2 weeks ago. We got you. It's hard to forget you. Yeah, I think that's normally like the difference with the Glenbard West when they go from good to great is they have a kid like Cox. So we'll see what happens.
And Cox mentioned his offensive line too when you stopped out there for practice this week and just said, I think he said, as long as they create the holes, like, what did he, I don't,
Yeah, he's quite confident. He's not too worried about it, and I wouldn't either if I was Glenbard West running back.
Number 8, Homewood Flossmoor, similar team to Glenbard West. They finished 9-2, lost in the second round. So what prompted you to put them at number 8?
What's not to like about Homewood Flossmoor's defense is another theme. Defense is still the theme. They have a kid, Winston Russell, who's going to be going to Oregon State. And Oregon State, kind of like North Dakota State, I feel like it's an underrated program. You get a lot of really athletic kids. A lot in that program, and so you know that kid can play ball. To be honest with you, I know that if Oregon State's taking him.
They only allowed 15 points per game last season, averaged giving up 15 points per game last season. That's incredible.
And that's very unusual for HF. HF is known for their offense. So the fact that I'm sitting here telling you that their defensive line is probably going to be one of the best in the area is not normal. I mean, I'm really excited to see they had a couple of juniors, Isaiah Coe being one of them last year, that you went to watch them play on defense and you're like, wow, like I'm not surprised that they allowed less than 15 points per game. I don't expect that to change this year. They just have to fill holes on offense too, and we'll see. I mean, this Homewood Flossmoor, Glenbard West, Lake Zurich, those guys could be in the top 5 pretty quickly, depending on how their offense shakes out.
There's a quarterback battle going on. Dominic Jones is the kid we saw play last year. He was a typical young player where he's a great athlete, did some exciting things, but also was throwing some key interceptions and had some rough moments. The two players competing with him are Khalid Lamar and Cameron Wright. When I was out there, Craig Bazia, the coach, wasn't sure yet what they were going to do. Leon Tana is a name we've known for the last couple of years. He's going to step in and have a much bigger role at running back now that Justin Hall is gone. And he's a kid I think they can depend on while they're trying to figure out the quarterback thing. And they've got always have huge long receivers, and Morian Scott's back. So I don't think anybody's too worried about the offense. And with a defense solid like that, HF's just fun to watch.
They talked about, though, too, that they're not known for, or the notion is not that they're a strong defensive team, but giving up only 15 points per game last season. How have people not picked up on the fact that they're a talented defensive team?
Because in the big games, when they really needed to beat a good team and stop them, they didn't.
Okay.
So
super high flying offense.
Yeah,
they could put up points on command and have been able to for years. So defense, I think, is defense wins championships. I hate to be that person. Defense wins championships, and offense is what brings the crowds, right? I think that's been Homewood Flossmoor for the last couple of years. I will say their calling card could very well be their defense this year, and we might be looking at them a little bit more like a Glenbard West. Glenbard West, when I think of defense, I think of the hitters, for God's sake, right?
Yes, they match their name pretty well.
Right? Yeah. There's never a question that they're going to have a good defense. That's their calling card, and we'll see. The X factor for Homewood Flossmoor this year will be their defense.
All right, next up is our number 6 team, which is Batavia. Talk about what puts you, or 7, I'm sorry.
Skip Nazareth.
You guys already know, though. We've already put these numbers out, so I'm not giving anything away. But yeah, number 7, I'm sorry, I skipped to 6, is Nazareth, which they have always been, or the last year, were a young team. They've outgrown that now. This is going to be an exciting team to watch this season.
Yeah, they were really exciting last year in all but one game, which I think is the one I saw, the loss to Marist when they got kind of thwacked by them. But I think what's interesting with them is, everybody's older and experienced now except this quarterback. J.J. McCarthy, who has a list of offers, it looks like, and is a really good prospect, but he's not quite as seasoned as the rest of them. So that might be the only thing to worry about. I don't think it's much to worry about, though. Michael Love, Devin Blakely back. And they're up to 7A. I guess that's really the big story. Will they, with so many kids playing both ways, like a lot of the smaller schools do, will they be able to handle 7A?
Out of practice, though, they seemed completely confident in that fact. I don't think they'd let on that they weren't, but 7A, they didn't seem like would be an issue for them at all.
Yeah, nobody ever says it's going to be an issue until it is. But this is a team Beth's been high on, this group, for a couple of years. I know the preseason last year you were higher on them than a lot of people, and you were proven right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, here's the reason why, though. So when you watch a high school team practice, and I hate to pull it back to the ones practicing behind us, but Phillips, I truly think the difference between a Nazareth and a Phillips and the success that they've seen over the last 4 to 5 years comes down to the coaching and the discipline these coaches are installing in their players. So not just is Coach Racky a smart coach, he brings these really talented kids in and fits them into his offense and defense in ways that values their skill set, A, and secondarily, he doesn't take crap. These coaches that you see be really successful here, Frank Linty, honestly, is another one that comes to mind.
Right.
We're controversial with Coach Linty right now, but because we're excited to have you back this season. But I think that truly is the differentiating factor, right? Nazareth's going to step up and play because they're not going to make dumb mistakes. They are not just confident, they also understand the game, and their coaching staff is.
That's something Coach Racky talked about at practice as well, was just the practice the day before we went out. He was not happy with his team, and he started his practice just simply stating that.